what the end is gonna be. I open my mouth to the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go, to see what the end is gonna be.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
To see what the end is gonna be.
I once was lost, but now I'm found.
To see what the end is gonna be. I open my mouth to the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go, to see what the end is gonna be. I open my mouth to the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go, to see what the end is gonna be.
If you don't believe I've been redeemed,
To see what the end is gonna be.
follow me down to the Jordan stream.
To see what the end is gonna be. I open my mouth to the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go, to see what the end is gonna be. I open my mouth to the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go,
I shall go,
I shall go,
I will go,
I will go,
I shall go,
I shall go,
I will go,
I will go,
I shall go,
I shall go,
I will go,
I will go,
I shall go,
I shall go,
I will go,
I will go,
I shall go,
I shall go,
I will go,
I will go,
I shall go,
I shall go,
I will go,
I will go,
I shall go,
I shall go,
I will go,
I will go,
I shall go,
I shall go, to see what the end is gonna be.
Great, inspiring, and beautiful music from the Lee Street Baptist Church and Community Choir. Welcome, folks, to something that has been in the planning for almost 5 years. You may have read in the paper this morning an article about what brought us here. But in the Bristol Herald Courier in late 2017 was an article about the most famous man you have probably never heard of. It went on to tell us about a man named Charles Spurgeon Johnson, who was born right here in Bristol at 711 Moore Street, just this side of VI College. Tina McDaniel and Margaret Fire Robin and I were involved in coincidentally, a committee meeting to launch the first Martin Luther King celebration in Bristol for that January 2018. We talked about that article, and the article challenged the community to honor Charles Spurgeon Johnson in some manner. And I began to think about, maybe we all thought about and voiced our belief that a state historical marker would do just that. And I went around town and I took photographs of every what we call highway marker in Bristol, Virginia, or Tennessee. And we have, I may forget a lot today, and I'm going to forget exactly how many of those markers we have in Bristol, but it was 20-some. Not one mentioned an African American. So, that opened the door to the discussions about having a marker dedicated to Mr. Johnson. that idea was taken to the Bristol Historical Association, which pledged enough money to pay for the marker. And Tim Buchanan wrote a much too long version of a marker. And the Virginia Department of Historic Resources said, this is all great information, but you all need 2 markers. Or whittle down what you got. Well, we didn't know what to eliminate. So, 2 markers it was going to be. Along about sometime during this effort, Kathy Houseman, who used to be involved with the Paramount Theater, said that she used to work in a law firm in New York City with Jay Johnson, the former Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and that she would be willing to reach out to him and ask him if he was interested in helping with this marker project, because Charles Spurgeon Johnson was his grandfather. And Mr. Charles Spurgeon's father was Charles Henry Johnson, the man that built Lee Street Baptist Church on this site.
Yes.
So Jay Johnson jumped all over this project. We went from Mr. Oakley and Secretary Johnson to Jay and Sid. We've talked on the phone, we've emailed, we've texted, we've met in person earlier today, and I've made a friend. At some point during this 4-year, almost 5-year story, I pulled in right here one day to look at the site of the church, which was between this building and that park, and that fire hall. Dr. W.A. Johnson from Lee Street Baptist Church was parked right behind me. I jumped out of the car and ran over and said, Dr. Johnson, you're not going to believe what we're talking about doing. And I started telling him, and he said, that church was right here. And I said, I know it. And I'm still chilling when I think about it. That God sent me down here to talk to W.A. Johnson about it, and I didn't even know he was here. So we talked about where the markers ought to be. That didn't take long. There was no question about where they should be. We talked about funding the second marker, and we're not going to talk about which one's which, because all the funds were needed for both markers, so the money was commingled and they're out there. This has been the greatest and most enjoyable and rewarding experience of my life, that finally 2 of the untold number of accomplished African Americans who have been born here, raised here, passed through here, worked here, are here now. And we're acknowledging not just 2, but all of the African Americans that have ever had anything to do with that church or this town. I may not be through, but I'm going to pause for a little while. And I'm going to invite my good longtime friend, pastor of Lee Street Baptist Church for over 60 years, Dr. W.A. Johnson, to offer the invitation.
Amen. Flattening our hearts together and bowing our heads.
returned abroad, to look for him to come with all kinds of understandings and appreciations. Honor. Father, we honor you, love you, we thank you. We have things to celebrate, people to celebrate, recognize what they did, how they lived, how they impacted our lives, how you, through them, ministered to us. We come to honor one of you. And we thank you for those who took the time to speak. Continue to bless and prosper the work that was started right here, in this spot. Carry it on and continue to multiply it and bless us. Guide us, direct us, protect us, be with us. We thank you in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I mentioned Tina McDaniel earlier. There's no way we'd be here without Tina.
Amen. Amen to that.
And I am so happy for the friendship we've created. Come on up and share your comments on it.
Some prepared comments, and I think Sid shared a lot about the history, so I know I don't need to go into the history, but I want to thank everyone for attending this afternoon's dedication. Sid mentioned I'm Tina McDaniel, and I am a member of the Bristol Historical Association, the Marker Task Force, and we're the group that worked on bringing this together. So we're just so thankful that you're here. In December 2017, we read the amazing news articles that were in the Bristol Herald Courier. We read about Charles Spurgeon Johnson and his father, the Reverend Charles Henry Johnson, and that connection, that legacy to Lee Street Baptist Church. Since that time, as Sid has mentioned, there were many conversations that took place around the significance of these gentlemen and their contribution to our community. Fast forward, we are here today, and I'm a little choked up because I'm so excited about it, to celebrate the culmination of these meetings and conversations. So this is really deeply important to me. Dr. Beverly Tatum is somebody that I really enjoy, and she's a psychologist and former president of Spelman College. And she says in her work focused on young people and identity formation, that sometimes the assumptions we make about others come not from what we have been told or what we have seen on television or in books, but rather from what we have not been told. Omitted information can have similar effects. For example, and she shares an example, a young woman preparing to be a high school English teacher expressed her dismay that she had never learned about any African American authors in any of her English courses. So how was she to teach about African American authors when she hadn't learned anything about them herself? One of her students, a white male, responded to this discussion with a little frustration in his response. And he said, "It's not my fault that African Americans don't write books." Well, did any of his teachers tell him that there were no African American authors? Probably not. Yet, because he had never been exposed to these authors, he had drawn his own conclusion that there were none. So that is the reason why this is extremely important today. So thank you everyone for being here today. So today is significant in the life of our community and for our young and the not so young. This day holds special meaning as we unveil the first historical markers in our city dedicated to the accomplishments of African American leaders, father and son, who are part of our rich community history. To God be the glory. Amen. This historic occasion would not have been possible without the support of several individuals and organizations. In addition to today's program participants, the back of your program acknowledges key individuals that help make today possible, And in our effort to plan, we always leave out a name, so I'd like to make sure that one name that was inadvertently left out, and a name that's really important to me, is Thomas and Diane McDaniel contributed to this endeavor as well. So on behalf of the Bristol Historical Association and the Bristol Historical Association Marker Task Force, we thank everyone who played a role in today's event. At this time, I invite Vice Mayor Neil Osborne from the city of Bristol, Virginia to the podium. And following his comments, Mayor Malin Luttrell from the city of Bristol, Tennessee will offer some remarks.
Thank you, Tina.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm a little bit taller than this mic stand, so I'm going to bring it up to me. I would say, we're out here in the rain, but, any day in Bristol is a beautiful day, and today is no exception, so it's a beautiful day, and it's a beautiful crowd of people who are here to honor this day. So I just want to say, on behalf of the city of Bristol, Virginia, we are incredibly honored to have these markers here, right here in Cumberland Square Park, where so many people are going to see them every day. Charles Spurgeon Johnson was a pioneer in education for African Americans and for really everyone. So it is an honor to be able to have this here and get the history of what he did out, because that's a name you never hear. It's a name you've never heard if you've not looked. And in Lee Street Baptist Church, when I was, I'm gonna say 10 or 12 years old, I met Dr. Johnson. My dad knew him, and he told me what a good, godly man he is, and no truer words have been spoken. And Lee Street does so much good in our community. They help everyone in the community that needs help, and we're so thankful to have them here. I would like to thank Secretary Johnson, obviously, for being here. It is an honor to have a former cabinet secretary right here in the city of Bristol, Virginia. And I would also like to thank the Bristol Historical Association for making this possible, and for all the contributors who helped get us there. This is a big, monumental day for Bristol, and this is just the beginning of the education and getting the word out about this worthy information. So this is just the beginning. So thank you all for being here, and I'll bring up Mayor Luttrell.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be here today. I'd like to thank all those here for coming to this dedication, and especially including Mr. Jay Johnson, former Secretary of Homeland Security, a direct descendant of these men we're here to honor today. Some might think, what a cold and rainy day it is today. But on the other hand, I look at it as being as warm, bright, and sunny. I'm so thankful that I live in a community that has such thoughtful, hardworking passion for passion for our history in Bristol. I want to thank our Historical Society, Association, and everyone that's been a part of putting this wonderful dedication together. Charles Spurgeon Johnson, Reverend Charles Henry Johnson, and Lee Street Baptist Church, for all their hard-fought efforts in bringing our community together then and now. This recognition for these gentlemen and the Lee Street Baptist Church was long overdue. The Johnson name symbolizes the good, caring people that we are here as Bristolians. In closing, I was collecting my thoughts earlier today, and I was going back and thinking about some things that just kept popping up in my head. And those things were, I thought about a song that was written in 1963 by Sam Cooke, and that is, "A Change is Going to Come." The other was a speech that was written and delivered also in 1963 by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I Have a Dream. Ladies and gentlemen, this journey has been long away. It's been way too long, and these two events happened 58 years ago. I truly believe the change is happening and the dream is becoming a reality. Yet, there's much more that needs to be done. And I thank you for your time, and all that each and every one of you do for our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to our representatives, our mayors from Bristol, Virginia, and Bristol, Tennessee. At this time, we are so pleased to have with us Dr. Colita Fairfax from the Virginia Department of Historic Resources. So I'm going to share just a little bit about her. She is the former board chair and a current board member of the Virginia Department of Historic Resources. She is an applied social scientist, which is nice. Charles Spurgeon Johnson was a social scientist. Dr. Fairfax's research specialties include socio-historical research, community organization and development, social policy about the African American community, and African American women. Dr. Fairfax serves as inaugural faculty fellow with the Center on African American Public Policy at Norfolk State University. And I found that we have something in common today. We're both preachers' kids. So glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor. It is such an honor and a privilege to be here again in this beautiful city of Bristol for this significant moment as God has brought us the liquid sunshine today. We are here to celebrate the African American community, the Lee Street Baptist Church, the Johnson family, and Dr. Charles Spurgeon Johnson, a native son. I first learned about our pioneer in sociology around my dining room table at home because my father was a sociology major at the historic Black university, Virginia Union University, where also Dr. Johnson attended. And so I learned around the dining room table, as many of us do, about events focusing on your community, focusing on research and history. And that's where I learned about Dr. Johnson's research in race relations. In fact, also his classmate, Dr. John Malchus Ellison, would become a mentor and senior colleague to my father and the first Black president of Virginia Union University, just as Dr. Johnson became the first Black president of Fisk. I then would study Dr. Johnson even more so as an undergraduate student at Howard University. I learned that although William Julius Wilson is credited for his modern study of class and race relations in Chicago, it is really Dr. Charles Johnson who should be credited as the first person studying class and race in his seminal 1919 study, modeling and analyzing race relations in our community. So I want to make sure we know that. Virginia's first historical roadside markers were erected in 1927, making ours the oldest state marker program in the country. Since then, we've placed more than 2,800 signs across the state, although only 370 markers reflect African American history and culture. Thus, this marker dedication fits a statewide mandate to increase markers bearing important narratives of African American contributions. Everyone deserves to be remembered, and our memory should be long. In 1976, the Commonwealth stopped funding new markers, so now in most cases we rely on private organizations such as historical societies, churches, alumni associations, cities, and municipalities to apply for new markers and pay for their manufacture. The application process is rigorous. Each potential marker topic must display regional, statewide, or national significance, and the information on the sign must be thoroughly documented. Each proposed marker text must then be approved by the board. So given the high standards of the marker program, the dedication of both of these signs are certainly reason to celebrate. And I need to tell you all that when these texts came before the board, I was chair then, I issued a resounding approval, and I told Dr. Looks, who runs the marker program, you let me know when they said it, because I have gotten to be there. And I live in Hampton, and I made sure that I was going to be here. The Department of Historic Resources would like to thank City Council, VDOT, the Public Works Department for their role in installing the marker. But I really need to thank Mr. Sid Oakley. He contacted me in advance. He has shepherded this work. He's excited, enthusiastic. I appreciate his progressive tenor, the way in which he conducts business, and the fact that he's not afraid of our history. So I think we ought to really give him another round. offering a unique and very visible way to inform and educate the public. Highway markers help bring history to life by linking important stories about Virginia's past to the very landscape where they took place. So yes, as immediate past chairman of the board and on behalf of the Commonwealth of Virginia, we are so proud to share this special day. I do want to mention really briefly that our long memory calls for us to reflect upon Dr. Johnson, not only as a pioneering sociologist, but he was also, people forget this, a diplomat to Liberia. So the Johnson family can claim 2 people have served as diplomats. And this earned him global respect as an expert on race relations. In fact, in Philip Johnson's 2004 dissertation covering Dr. Johnson's role as diplomat with the League of Nations, he underscored how Dr. Johnson learned how people are really exploited in conditions that encouraged caste, class, and political disenfranchisement. Dr. Charles Johnson was known for his extraordinary patience, for his ability to show self-control, his reliance on facts, and his style, which aligned with another sociological heavyweight, E. Franklin Frazier, and NAACP President Ralph Bunche, who he corresponded through letters often. His dogged determination was in no doubt an influence from his parents. In fact, the year that Charles Johnson was born, a mob lynched an African American, dragged his corpse down the street past the Johnson house. Reverend Johnson of Lee Street Baptist Church, diminutive but determined, confronted the mob, warned it of eternal fire and brimstone, which awaited them if they continued, but they only laughed at him when he explained what the punishment would be for their sins. Dr. Charles Johnson witnessed his mother's grace and dignity as she endured insults and racial treatment. And all of these experiences informed Dr. Johnson's sensibilities about his study of sociology. In fact, his experiences in Bristol informed how he would theorize Black advancement and progress in race relations, which grow out of tension and conflict. Sean Elias wrote in 2009 that Dr. Johnson's social psychological perspective concerning African American content and character through methods of personal testimony, which we now call ethnographic methods, would define humanistic sociology today. Dr. Johnson believed Black people were a community and culture of their own, and in fact he wrote, and I quote him, "The cult of competence must be courted assiduously. We must write to be known, we must write well to be heard at all," end quote. So Dr. Charles Spurgeon Johnson, as we know you're witnessing this from heaven. We are writing our history, and you have your place in it. It is fitting that today we remember the Black community, the Lee Street Baptist Church, and all those who poured into our historic figure, Dr. Charles Spurgeon Johnson. It's a great day to remember, and I thank you so much for your time.
At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Terrence Hicks, and he will be reading the letter from Fisk University president. Dr. Hicks is also an accomplished social scientist. He's a research consultant and published author. Dr. Hicks' research has contributed to the publication of numerous studies on student self-efficacy, college retention, high school to college transition, and the unique experiences of the first-generation college student population. Currently, Dr. Hicks serves as professor in the Department of Education, Leadership, and Policy Analysis at East Tennessee State University in Johnson City, Tennessee. So Dr. Hicks.
Good afternoon, Bristol Historical Association officers and committee members, Bristol, Virginia, Tennessee, Bristol, Tennessee city officers, and Johnson family and friends. My name is Terrence Hicks, and I'm a social scientist in the field of education who has conducted research analysis on the college student population. For over 20 years, or the last 20 years, I've examined and published books on topics such as self-efficacy, high school to college transition, spirituality among college students, and recently released an award-winning memoir highlighting my education journey to deanship. When I was asked to participate in this historical event to honor Dr. Charles Spurgeon Johnson, I began to research his life and work and noticed that we had some few things in common. First of all, we are both natives of Virginia. Second, we both attended universities in Virginia. Dr. Johnson attended Virginia Union University, and I attended Virginia State University. Third, we both pledged the same fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha. Lastly, early on in our career, we both served as department chairs. Dr. Johnson served as department chair at Fisk University, and I served as department chair at Fayetteville State University, which is a system school in the University of North Carolina system. So academically, I feel connected to the Johnson family. There's nothing more gratifying to me than to honor another positive African-American male, such as Dr. Charles Johnson, who was a successful sociologist and the first African-American president of Fisk University. As a social scientist, I am inspired by his work and academic accomplishments. Dr. Johnson's classic study on Chicago race riot of 1919 was groundbreaking. Even some 100 years ago, his work on race relations still has an influence on social scientists today. Additionally, his model study titled The Negro in Chicago, a study of race relations and race riot in 1919 is still significant and important as it provides a historical perspective into urban race relations in the 20th century. Equally, Dr. Johnson's work and tenure as the first African-American president of Fisk University was noteworthy. Under his leadership, Fisk University gained national attention and will be recognized for his expertise in race relations. Dr. Johnson's accomplishments are echoed in a letter by Fisk University's 17th president, Dr. Van Newkirk. President Newkirk notes that he supports this occasion of the unveiling of a historical marker and celebrate the unique significance and contributions of Dr. Johnson. He further notes that Charles Johnson served the Fisk community as a faculty member and an administrator for more than 25 years, and the effects of his leadership and influence can still be seen in different aspects of Fisk University academic and social life today. For an example, a few months ago, after arriving at Fisk University in 1928 as a professor of sociology and director of the Department of Social Science, Charles Johnson built what is known as the School of Humanities and Behavioral Sciences at Fisk University. Furthermore, President Newark's letter notes that from 1928 to 1930, Dr. Johnson helped design and coordinate and construct the first memorial library at Fisk University, which still stands at the university campus and is listed on the National Register of Historical Places. And in 1942, Johnson began a series of seminars on race relations at Fisk University, therefore establishing the first race relations institute in the South. President Newkirk adds in his letter that these integrated workshops and seminars focus on social problems of racial discrimination and promoted solutions leading to equal opportunities. The social, political, and economic issues Johnson identified during the 1940s are still critical to addressing and improving existing disparities in African American communities. Therefore, the John R. Lewis Institute for Social Justice at Fisk University exists today as a continuance of Johnson's race relations institutes, which shaped many of the conversations and progressive policies of the 1960s and the 1970s. President Newkirk highlights in his letter that in 1947, Charles S. Johnson became the first Fisk University African American president. While as president, Dr. Johnson began a building program which included construction of new buildings on campus for the first time in nearly 20 years. 2 of these buildings are still in use at the university. Fisk University Gymnasium, completed in 1950 and later rededicated as the Henderson Johnson Memorial Gymnasium, continued to operate as the main recreation sports facility and is a gathering place for the Fisk University community. In 1953, President Johnson dedicated and named a new social science building after Dr. Robert Park, his former professor and advisor at the University of Chicago. After Johnson's death in 1956, Park Hall was renamed Park Johnson Hall in his honor. Dr. Newkirk notes that the building was renovated years later, but is still dedicated to the study of social sciences. In closing, President Newkirk notes that Charles S. Johnson marks remain here at Fisk University forever. And today we join you in celebrating and honoring his legacy in Bristol, Virginia. Both his scholarship and leadership in the movement for racial integration and interracial cooperation precedes the Brown versus Board of Education decision and lays an important groundwork for the modern civil rights movement in America. May this historical marker stand as a testament to his leadership and enduring impact on our community and our country forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sid. You're very, very good at that. Distinguished guest, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, we all know that the real person in charge of Homeland Security, because all politics are local, is your mayor. And your vice mayor, wherever we went. Reverend Johnson, it's good to see you again. Reverend Johnson, you should know that a couple of years ago, a young man called me and asked me if he could, on Black History Month, write a book report about me. And I said, I'm honored, I'm flattered, of course. And I asked him, can I come to your class and hear the book report? And he said, well, if you do, you'll be the only subject who is still living. On behalf of my family, who I will introduce in a moment, thank you all for being here. Thank you for this honor and recognition you are bestowing on my grandfather and my great-grandfather. I'm glad to be here. I worked really hard to get here. You know that I left Reagan National yesterday, and as I got on the plane, I realized, okay, I'm going from one place in Virginia to go to another place in Virginia, but to do that, I gotta fly through Atlanta. It's still true. Wherever you go in the Southeast, and if you die, you have to stop and change in Atlanta. So, sure enough, that's what happened to me. I served as your Secretary of Homeland Security for 1,124 days. A little over 3 years. I was counting. I had an app on my phone that would count down the days, hours, minutes until January 20, 2017, when President Obama and all of his cabinet, including me, would leave office. I look forward to being a private citizen again, without the entourage, without the Secret Service, without the motorcade, without the armored vehicles, without the responsibilities of being in office, and I look forward to being a private citizen again. It was not always easy being the Secretary of Homeland Security for many, many reasons. For one thing, my kids, who were both in college, used to get very nervous whenever I'd come visit them on their college campus. My son was a freshman at Occidental College my first year in office. And one day I decided to visit him in Southern California in his college campus. And so I showed up unannounced with 3 black Suburbans, United States Secret Service, CHIPS, California Highway Patrol, in the vehicles and on the bikes. Does anybody know what happens when a motorcade full of law enforcement shows up in a freshman college dorm unannounced? You hear lots of doors slam. You hear lots of toilets flush. And somebody finally opens the door to their room and says, oh, it's Jay's dad, the coast is clear. My daughter went to Scripps College in Southern California, Women's Liberal Arts College. Now my daughter, her attitude is, Dad, don't embarrass me. It's not all about you, Dad. Leave behind as much of the bodyguards as you can when you come to my college campus. And so I tried my best to follow my daughter's orders. And so we left the bikers and Chips a couple of blocks away, but I still had to have some Secret Service show up to protect me. And so I walked onto my daughter's college campus on a Saturday morning with only 2 Secret Service agents. But still, on a women's liberal arts college campus in Southern California, 2 Secret Service agents are conspicuous. Social media on that campus lit up that morning. The first text was from one student to another. Hey, there are 2 Secret Service agents on this campus. What up? And then another kid texted, Obama's here. And then another one texted, no, Obama's not here. His daughter's looking at us for college. My son had to jump in to the conversation. You know, he's watching this. And he says, no, it's Vin Diesel. He has bodyguards. And somebody finally figured it out. They said, oh, it's the fake Obama. He's the head of Homeland Security. His daughter's a freshman here. And then some wise kid finally said, well, that's too bad. She won't get a date in 4 years. Now, in private life, some people still recognize me. They look at me and they say, weren't you the Secretary of Agriculture? I said, no. Once in a while, stuff happens around airplanes and trains. Once in a while, somebody will say to me, did anybody ever tell you you look just like that guy, Jay Johnson? Or, I was once on the Acela, heading from Washington to New York, and I was waiting in the cafe car in a line, and this lady looked at me, and she got her iPhone out, and she queued up the camera function, and she came up to me and she said, sir, I'm from the United Kingdom, and my son, back in the United Kingdom, really admires everything you did in office. He is such a big fan of yours, and I was so touched. And she finally worked up to her request. She said, may I please have a selfie with you to give my son? And I said, of course you can. So we took the selfie, and I was wearing these White House cufflinks. You know where this is going, right? And so she turned around, she looked back at me, and she said, thank you, Mr. President. Now, yesterday, when I walked into Reagan National, I'm not making this up. I'm not making any of this up. You know, some of you know when you get to the TSA line, there's this video with the Secretary of Homeland Security talking about if you see something, say something. And I walked up to the TSA officer to present my driver's license and my boarding pass. And all of a sudden, on the TV camera, I see myself. At Reagan National, they forgot to take down my video. They've been playing my video for 5 years, even though I haven't been in office for 5 years. And I couldn't help it. He said, ID, please. And I said, turn around. And he turned around and he looked like that. And I said, you guys need to take my video down. Well, we loved you so much in office. We just want to keep playing your video over again. I want to acknowledge all of the descendants of Reverend Charles H. Johnson who are here in ascending order. My timing is great. In ascending order. And let me begin with the 5th generation of descendants of Reverend Charles H. Johnson. Christopher Johnson, please stand. Now, you can stand or wave, whatever you like. 4th generation is myself, great-grandson of Reverend Charles H. Johnson, grandson of Dr. Charles S. Johnson, and my wife Susan, who you've already met. My first cousin, Charles S. Johnson III. Please stand. Also known as Trey. You'd like to be interested to know there's a Charles S. Johnson V out there. Charles S. Johnson V, his wife Sandra Johnson, Dr. J. Clifford, my cousin Dr. J. Clifford, his wife Karen, where'd she go?
She's here. I'm so
Oh,
tall.
there you are, right there, okay. Still on the fourth generation, my first cousin Maurice Clifford. You can see we all have Reverend Charles H. Johnson's very handsome hairline. His wife Tina. My first cousin, Professor Winifred Johnson of Bethune-Cookman College in Florida. And now we're up to the, and fourth generation still. My second cousin, Charles Nathaniel Hawk III, there with the white hat. From Atlanta, wearing a New York Yankees hat, go figure. My second cousin, Dr. Madeline Hawk, right there. Now we're working up the third generation. Gene Sims from Richmond, Virginia, please stand. And last but not least, who just arrived, third generation, Reverend Charles H. Johnson's grandson, Charles Nathaniel Hawk Sr. Just drove from Atlanta. Reverend Johnson, you've been pastor of Lee Street Baptist Church for over 60 years. Charles Nathaniel Hawk has been deacon of Friendship Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia for 60 years. Thank you for the honor you bestow upon our ancestors. We're here to recognize two great men and the things that they built, which still exist today. Charles S. Johnson, who you've heard about, one of the leading sociologists of his time, considered the godfather of the Harlem Renaissance. Exactly 291 miles to the southwest of here, in Nashville, Tennessee, is his gravesite. If you go to his gravesite in Nashville, Tennessee, and you look at the headstone, you will see all of the distinguished accomplishments of Dr. Johnson. Sixth president of Fisk University, social scientist, author, educational statesman, member of the U.S. Commission to Liberia in 1930, member of the Education Mission to Japan in 1946, U.S. representative to UNESCO, a number of honorary degrees from Harvard, Columbia, Virginia Union, Lincoln University, University of Glasgow, and a product of this very community here in Bristol, Virginia. A number of impeccable credentials on his headstone, on my grandfather's headstone. If you go exactly 201 miles to the northeast of here, to Lynchburg, Virginia, you will find the gravesite of Reverend Charles H. Johnson, Charles S. Johnson's father, who was a product of this community, as everyone knows. He was born a slave in 1859, lived here for decades, died in 1932 when his grandson, Charles Nathaniel Hawk, was a year old. They lived during the same period of time. Charles Nathaniel Hawk has been around long enough to have known his grandfather, who was an emancipated slave. Less is known about Charles H. Johnson. My first time here to Bristol was 1990. I was a single lawyer in Manhattan, and I had a weekend, nothing to do. I rented a car, and I was curious about Bristol, Virginia. I drove all the way down here. I attended Lee Street Baptist Church on a Sunday and actually met people who had been baptized by Reverend Johnson. In that moment, for me, 4 generations had collapsed into one. To be touched by someone who had been touched by him. 5 kids. As described by his son, the sociologist, in his writings, he describes his father, Reverend Charles H. Johnson, as a devoutly religious Baptist minister who had the will and the way of translating his religious convictions into useful and pioneering social action. That was Reverend Johnson. He built the church that still exists today, Lee Street Baptist Church. On his headstone in Lynchburg, Virginia, is just 3 words. And it's the same 3 words I think I want on my headstone. It just simply says, Reverend Charles H. Johnson, a good life. A good life. Isn't that what it's all about? So, on behalf of my family, we are so pleased that members of this community have chosen to acknowledge and recognize our ancestors. And we hope that all of you accept and believe that the Johnsons who lived here, who walked these hills, who breathed this air, led a good life. Thank you.
Of course, that's the church. And it was on the corner of Lee Street and Sycamore Street. Well, as you can see, there's no corner there, but there was. For many years, Sycamore Street came from Commonwealth, across Solar Hill, down across Piedmont, right through that helicopter, and right over to Front Street. So the church was on that corner. The original church came from 39 former slaves who were members of the Goodson Baptist Church or the Bristol Baptist Church, which is now First Baptist Church up on the corner of State and Virginia Street. And they built the frame church behind this parking lot, about where the jail is now. And that was their church. Not all the black people in Bristol went there, but a lot did. When Charles Henry Johnson came to town, he led the effort to add a steeple to the church and a narthex, or foyer, or vestibule. And there are pictures of that church. Then they built the brick church led by Reverend Charles Henry Johnson. Now back to the graphics on the front of your program. I did that artwork. No, it wasn't. No, I'm sorry, I'm mistaken. It was not me. That artwork was done because of the blessed talent of a young man named Dakari Wheeler. Dakari, would you come up here, please? Thank you so much for doing that for all of us as a cherished keepsake. And here's a token of our appreciation for your efforts. Thank you so much. I'd like to invite Dr. W.A. Johnson to come forward, please, sir.
What you gonna do?
Corey, your graphics were okay. Mine are a lot bigger. Would you please hand that to Secretary Jay Johnson on behalf of all of us? And Corey, would you please present this to Dr. W.A. Johnson on the behalf of all of us? Dr. Johnson, you can take that home a couple of days, but bring it back. We want to see it hanging at Lee Street Baptist Church. Thank you, sir. So, let's unveil some markers.
Fisk University. That's